Daf Yomi, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 42b. This side, meaning 42b, starts the 6th chapter of Tractate Sanhedrin. The chapter is called Nigmar Hadin, after the Mishnah of that name. And here it is. The Mishnah says, Nigmar Hadin, Motzi'in oto lesoklo, bet haskila hayachutz lebet din. The Mishnah says, when the trial has ended in a guilty verdict, the condemned man has been sentenced to be stoned. He is taken out to be stoned. The place of stoning was outside the court and a little beyond it. As it is stated with regard to a blasphemer, take him out. Take out him who has cursed to outside the camp, and let all that heard him lay their hands upon his head, and let all the congregation stone him. Leviticus 24:14. One man stands at the entrance to the court with cloths in his hands. And another man sits on a horse at a distance from him, but where he can see him. Omer echad yesh lalamed alav zchut hala manef besudrin ve'asus rav ratz mamidan. אפילו הוא אומר יש לי ללמד על עצמי זכות, מחזירים אותו אפילו 4 ו5 פעמים, ובלבד שיש ממש בדבריו. If one of the judges says, I can teach a reason to acquit him, the other, meaning the man with the cloths, waves the cloths as a signal to the man on the horse, and the horse races off after the court agents who are leading the condemned man to his execution, and he stops them, and they wait until the court determines whether or not the argument has substance. And even if he, the condemned man himself, says, I can teach a reason to acquit myself, he is returned to the courthouse even 4 or 5 times, provided that there is substance of his words. Okay. So that's the Mishnah. Now this is the Gemara. The Talmud says, "Ubeit haskila chutz lebeit din hava betula ve'hatanya beit haskila haya chutz l'shalosh machanot." The Gemara asks, and was the place of stoning just outside the court and nothing more? Does it suffice that the place of execution is only a short distance from the court and no further? But isn't it taught in the Braita the place of stoning was outside the distance that is equivalent to the length of the 3 camps in the wilderness, the camp of the divine presence, the camp of the Levites, and the camp of the Israelites. In Jerusalem there were 3 corresponding camps: the temple with its courtyard, the Temple Mount, and the rest of the city. The distance in the wilderness outside of the 3 camps corresponds to a place outside the city walls and limits. In Kedamrit Hayab Benediktani Hachi Nafka Mina Dina Vik Bedina Yativ Chut L'Shalosh Machanot Avdinan Behaskila Chut Lebet Din Ki Hechi Dela Mit Chaze Bet Din Rochtzin Inami Ki Hechi Dit Have Le Hatzala. The Gemara answers, yes, it is as you said that the place of stoning was outside the 3 camps. And the practical difference from the fact that the Mishnah teaches the halakha in this manner is that if it happened that the court went out and convened outside the 3 camps, even then the place of stoning is set up at a certain distance from the court and not immediately adjacent to it. So that the court should not appear to be a court of killers. Alternatively, the reason the place of stoning must be distance from the court is so that the condemned man might have a chance to be saved, meaning that so that during the time it takes for him to be taken from the court to the place of stoning, someone will devise a claim in his favor. Minahani mili ditanu rabanan הוציא את המקלל אל מחוץ למחנה, חוץ לשלוש מחנוס. אתה אומר חוץ שלוש מחנוס, או אינו אלא חוץ למחנה אחד. נאמר כאן מחוץ למחנה, ונאמר בפרים הנשרפים חוץ למחנה. מה להלן חוץ לשלוש מחנוס? אף כאן חוץ לשלוש מחנוס. The Gemara asks, from where is this matter derived, that the stoning is carried out outside the three camps, as the sages taught a Braita with regard to the verse, take out him who has cursed outside the camp, Leviticus 24:14. This means outside the three camps, meaning even outside the camp of the Israelites. Do you say that he is taken outside the three camps, or is he perhaps taken outside only one camp? Proof is brought that he must be taken outside the three camps. It is stated here that the condemned man is taken outside the camp, and it is stated with regard to bulls brought as sin offerings that are burned, they must be burned outside the camp, Leviticus 4:12. Just as there the bulls brought as sin offerings are burned when outside the three camps, so too here the condemned man is taken outside the three camps. והוסבן עלן ניתן רבנן והוציא את כל הפעל מחוץ למחנה חוץ לשלוש מחנויס אתה אומר חוץ לשלוש מחנויס The Gemara asks, and there, with regard to the bulls brought as sin offerings that are burned, from where do we derive that they must be burned when outside all three camps? As the sages taught in the Brisa, it is stated about the bull brought as a sin offering of the high priest, even the whole bull shall he carry outside the camp unto a clean place, where the ashes are poured out and burn it. Leviticus 4:12. For the whole bull shall he carry outside the camp unto a clean place, where the ashes are poured out and burn it. Leviticus 4:12. Meaning that he should take it outside the three camps. Do you say that he takes it outside the three camps, or is he required to take it outside only one camp? כשהוא אומר לחוץ למחנה בפרעידה, שאין טעם לו משנה כבר נאמר ושרף לו יסוי כאשר שרף וספר הראשון, ליתן לו מחנה שניו. When the verse states with regard to the bull brought as a communal sin offering, he shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull, Leviticus 4:21. It requires explanation, as there is no need for the verse to state outside the camp, since it already stated at the end of the same verse, and burn it as he burned the first bull, which indicates that all the halachot of the bull brought as a sin offering of a high priest apply to the bull brought as a communal sin offering. What then does the verse mean when it states outside the camp? To give it a second camp, meaning it indicates that it must be removed not only from the camp of the divine presence, corresponding to the the temple, but also from the Levite camp, corresponding to the temple mount. Temple mount, right. Kishuhu Omer El Michutz Levachem Edeshin She'en Tamid Lomar Hare Kvar Ne'emar Al Shefech Hadeshin Yisaref Litin Lo Machane Shlishit. And when another verse states with regard to the removal of the ash, and he shall put off his garments and put on other garments, and carry forth the ashes outside the camp to a clean place, Leviticus 6:4, that verse also requires an explanation, as there is no need for the verse to state this, since it is already stated with regard to the bull brought as a sin offering of a high priest. Even the whole bull shall he carry outside the camp to a clean place, where the ashes are poured out, and burn on it wood with fire. Where the ashes are poured out, it shall be burned, Leviticus 4:12. The repetition of outside the camp indicates that he is required to give it a third camp, meaning, teaching that it is burned when outside the Israelite camp corresponding to the land outside of Jerusalem's walls. The Gemara challenges this derivation of the halacha, governing one who is sentenced to be stoned, from the halacha governing the burning of bulls brought as a sin offerings. Perhaps the place of stoning should be learned from the halacha governing offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, about which the verse also uses the expression outside the camp. See Leviticus 17:3. Just as there with regard to offerings slaughtered outside the camp, the temple courtyard, these words mean outside only one camp, the camp of the divine presence corresponding to the temple, as the next verse states, and he did not bring it to the door of the tent of meeting, Leviticus 17:4, meaning the camp of the divine presence. So to hear the condemned man should be stoned outside the camp. The Gemara answers, for 3 reasons it is reasonable to derive the halacha governing one who is sentenced to be stoned from the halacha governing bulls brought as sin offerings that are burned. The Gemara explains, as with regard to the man to be stoned for blasphemy, it states, take out him who has cursed, to outside the camp, which is similar to what is stated about the sin bull offerings. Even the whole bull shall he carry v'hotzi outside the camp, whereas with regard to offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, it merely says outside the camp. Outside the camp. Additionally, michutz lamachane, outside the camp. Additionally, both in the case of stoning and in the case of the bulls brought as sin offerings, going outside the camp renders the act fit, as the blasphemer may not be stoned and the bulls may not be burned inside the camp, in contrast to the case of offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, where slaughtering them outside the camp renders the act forbidden. And additionally, both in the case of stoning and in the case of the bulls brought as sin offerings, being outside the camp achieves atonement, as both capital punishment and sin offerings atone for sin. Excuse me. Adarabe, b'shchutei chutz, havilei lemelaf. The Gemara rejects this reasoning. On the contrary, the halacha governing one who is sentenced to be stoned should be derived from the halacha governing offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, for 4 reasons. Sheken adam choteh b'neshama pigul. The Gemara explains the 4 reasons. As in both cases, it is a person who is outside, either one who is taken outside for stoning or the one who slaughters the offerings outside the temple courtyard, whereas in the case of the bulls brought as sin offerings, it is the bulls that are carried outside the camp. Additionally, both the blasphemer and the one who slaughters offerings outside the temple courtyard have committed a sin, while the bull has not. Additionally, both the blasphemer and the one who slaughters offerings outside the temple courtyard pay with their souls, as slaughtering an offering outside the temple is punishable with karet. And lastly, both in the case of the blasphemer and in the case of offerings slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, the halacha of disqualification of an offering that was sacrificed with the intent to consume it after its designated time, pigul, is not applicable, whereas this halacha is applicable to the bulls brought as sin offerings. Machshir mimachshir adif le. The Gemara explains, nevertheless, the Brayta prefers to compare one case of requiring going outside the camp to render an act fit, and another case of requiring going outside the camp to render an act fit, rather than comparing one case requiring going outside of the camp to render an act fit, and another case of going outside the camp that renders an act forbidden, as this is the most notable of the factors mentioned. Rav Papa Amar Moshe Hechi Hav Yasif B'Machne Levio V'Amalei Achmana Hoitzi Es Mekalel Mechutz Lamachne Chutz Lamachne Levio V'Yoitziu Es Mekalel Mechutz Lamachne Chutz Lamachne Yisrael. Rav Papa said the matter of the location of the place of stoning can be derived from the verses themselves. Where was Moses sitting when the matter of the blasphemer was brought before him? In the Levite camp, as he was a Levite. And it was there that the blasphemer was brought for trial. And the merciful one said to Moses, "Take out him who has cursed to outside the camp," indicating that he should be taken outside the Levite camp into the Israelite camp. And later it says, "And Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and they brought him that had cursed out of the camp, and they stoned him with a stone. And the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses," Leviticus 24:23, teaching that he was taken outside the Israelite camp as well. The Gemara raises an objection. This additional verse is necessary to teach about the implementation of God's instructions, meaning that the Jewish people did in fact carry out God's command, but this verse should not be understood as referring to an additional camp. The Gemara answers, the implementation of God's instruction is written explicitly, as it is stated in the continuation of the verse.